Welcome into the RotoWire PGA Rundown Show. I am your host, Ryan Andrade. Joining me, as always, is my fellow golf writer at RotoWire, Mr. Lynn Hochberg. This week, of course, we'll be previewing all things fantasy golf for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, the first signature event of the season. We'll talk some DFS, we'll talk some best bets, talk some one and done, and much more. But Len, I think first off, we got to start with what we saw last week out at the WM Phoenix Open. Honestly, I just had to say that this is probably one of the best, non-major tournaments I can remember in a while. It was really fun theater. You had a lot of good players on the leaderboard. I thought the golf course honestly played super well. The rough was up a little bit. It was really, really firm out there. They had some fun hole locations. Just talk about your takeaways from the week, and obviously, Chris Goddard winning for the second time this year already.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Ryan. It's just a fun tournament, and I don't even think it needs big names for the fun. We talked ad nauseum about everything that goes on there. We don't need to review that here. Everybody knows. But if it's a really tight tournament, that's even more so. Unfortunately, it looks like some of all of that festivities and drama and outside noise kind of affected the outcome of the tournament. Hideki Matsuyama on a couple of situations had to back off on 18 and in the end of regulation when he was putting, and then in the playoff a chair fell or something. I don't know if that was intentional. That was unfortunate, but Chris Goddard deserved to win. But I also thought, that stuff aside, Hideki Matsuyama kind of kicked away the tournament because it never should have got to the playoff. He sent it into the bunker, and then he couldn't get it out of the bunker cleanly on 18. So I think he lost this tournament, and he knows it.
Yeah, honestly, it was shocking just because he seemed like he had control of this all week for the most part. He was playing so good. I think CBS had a graphic that every single time in his PGA Tour career in which he had the outright 54-hole lead, he has converted that into victory. And, today you could sort of tell right away he kind of didn't really have it with his swing, especially off the tee. It was kind of he was getting away with it because he was putting amazingly. He was getting it up and down from everywhere. And then, it seemed to just finally catch up with him at the very end. So, definitely unfortunate, but, Goddard, I mean, that's definitely impressive to already be able to notch a fourth career win, second of the season. Obviously we saw the great run from Scotty Scheffler. After that poor first round, got almost all the way back there. You had lots of other guys that have played well this season. Siwoo Kim, Pearson Coody were up there. It was very fun to watch. But, let's sort of get into this week's tournament, the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. It's first of 8 signature events on the calendar. This is kind of a big stretch right now that we're in. We got 3 out of the next 4 weeks are signature events, and then we got the players right after that. So definitely want to be playing good around this time for sure. Len, what are just some of the keys to playing well here at Pebble Beach?
Yeah, it's one of the shortest golf courses the guys will see all year. 3 rounds at Pebble, 1 round at Spyglass. There's not a huge difference, I don't think, in like we've seen at some other courses, at some other tournaments at the Amex and at the Farmers, where one course was significantly harder and other courses were significantly easier. I think they're pretty close, or at least they have been the last few years. So there's no real advantage, first off, of playing a 1-round game at Spyglass or something like that. But one of the, Pebble Beach, 3 of the 4 rounds, one of the shortest golf courses, 6,900, the absolute smallest greens we will see all year at 3,500. So it's going to be hard to get the ball on the green in regulation. The approach shots will be shorter. A lot of approaches from 120 to 150 yards. That's one of my key stats for the week. But if greens are going to be missed, and they are because they're small greens, that brings scrambling into play. So I don't think driving distance matters that much this week, although Rory McIlroy in winning last year did lead the field in driving distance. But I think pretty much you need to have all the different clubs in your bag working. Hey, this is a U.S. Open course. It's going to be back at the U.S. Open next year. I think it's important for these guys that, they don't get to play it too much. I'm sure they'll play it next year, anyone who's going to be in the Open. But, you need every club in your bag to win a U.S. Open. And I think that goes even at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am.
Yeah, totally agree. And then, you kind of mentioned it, but Rory McIlroy is making a season debut this week. Tommy Fleetwood is also making his debut. Both those guys, they started off their season on the DP World Tour over in Dubai. I guess for Rory, this was a big tournament last year for him. It really sort of springboarded him into, the win at the Players, and then later, of course, that big one at the Masters. I think I honestly was kind of surprised that he won last year, just because, really short course like this doesn't really scream, a guy like Rory McIlroy, but he honestly still was able to overpower the golf course. He led the field in strokes gained off the tee. Talk about Rory for a little bit, and maybe your expectations for him in the 2026 season.
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. He had only played this tournament twice before. A lot of guys are fairly new to this tournament, only been playing it the last 2 years since it became a signature event. It's sort of an acquired taste, the Pro-Am format, more Pro-Am, more Am than any other tournament. Used to be 4 rounds, now it's down to 2. He had only played the 4-round Pro-Am once before. And I think in the signature event, the first year, he finished 66. So, yeah, I was surprised that he did do well. But I guess, if you are hitting the ball far and you are hitting the ball in the fairway, it doesn't matter how short the course is. You're still going to have an advantage. Of course, you have to do some other things as well. And he did that. So, yeah, it's interesting. This is going to be the first time that Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler have been on the same golf course in a tournament in 6 months. Rory goes off to Europe after the Tour Championship. Scottie Scheffler takes the rest of the year off. Rory McIlroy doesn't really get back into things until this week. He takes the first month off, or he's playing over in Europe. Yes, they did play at the Ryder Cup. I'm going to guess that Scottie Scheffler would like us to leave that part out of the equation, but they haven't played since the Tour Championship. So this is a really big deal. And as you mentioned, another top 5 player, Tommy Fleetwood, is here. So this is really when we're going to start to get, it seems almost too early to say the run up to the Masters, but it's just 2 months away, less than 2 months. Never
too early for that, Len, to talk about Augusta. Everybody loves talking about Augusta as early as it might come up. Just absolutely stacked field, 80-man field this week. I think the entire top 30 in the official world golf rankings this year, outside of JT, who's hurt, and then Reed and Hatton, who aren't eligible yet to play. So definitely loaded. Let's sort of shift over to the DFS board here, and obviously we got Scotty way at the top as he normally is. He's always in his own tier, right? And then Rory, I think, is about the highest non-Scotty price I think we've seen this year. So what's sort of the strategy for you towards the top of the DraftKings board?
Last week talked about how if you wanted to play Scottie Scheffler, and therefore you'd have to play probably 2 or in the 6,000s and some other low price guys. Well, more than half the field was making the cut last week. Well, this week, everyone is making the cut. So I think you can, there's just an inherent ability to take a little bit more risk. You're not going to lose 2 rounds and get screwed. And even if it's 6,000 guys that you pick have a bad first 2 rounds, they still have 2 rounds to recover, and they don't have that many guys to leapfrog to end up with a good finish. So if you want to play Scottie Scheffler, I would not worry about the price tag this week. He's even a little bit cheaper. What is he? He's 14,000 even, and last week he was 14.5. And as you mentioned, Rory McIlroy,
right?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Rory McIlroy 11.5. So it's only a $2,500 difference. But I think you can play Scheffler. Scheffler has only played this the last 2 years since it became a signature event. He hasn't won, but he played great. Last year, it was his season debut, coming back from the Christmas night hand surgery and all that. What, he finished 9th last year, and I think the year before he finished 6th. So he's been great here both years, hasn't won. This course, because it's shorter and there are more angles and they're just not a bomb it. the experience matters here. You learn the nuances of the course. And I wrote in my article in the Champions Profile how so many of the winners have played here multiple times before and done well here multiple times before. So many of the winners have played here 4, 5 times before. And Scottie Scheffler has now played this course twice before. So I think even the great Scottie Scheffler has things to learn every week. And I think he will play better this week on this course.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think, it's kind of interesting because, as you mentioned, this is the third year this has been a signature event. So, it was kind of an event that some of the top guys would play, but, a lot of times it was kind of a skip just based on where it was in the schedule. So, I think, the more years continues to be a signature event, the more some of these top guys get experience playing in these conditions. I kind of looked at the weather a little bit. It looked like it was going to be decent for the first few days, and then maybe Saturday, Sunday, some rain, some higher winds might come in, but you never know with the weather at this place. It seems like it can change just instantly. So,
yeah, I think the weather is going to be a factor. For a lot of years, the winning score was in the upper teens, 17, 18, 19, something like that. The last 2 years, it hit 20. I mean, 2 years ago, they only played 3 rounds with Wyndham Clark, and he shot a 60, and he got it to 20 under. And last year, McIlroy got it to 21 under. But the over-under that I saw on golfodds.com is 18.5, same as it was last year. So I think the weather, it's also going to be cold. As last I checked the weather last night, I don't know if temperature is going to hit 60 all week. So I think that the scores will be a little bit depressed from the last couple of years. And when that sort of thing happens, I think that helps Scottie Scheffler too. When things are harder, when conditions are harder, the best guys have an advantage over the guys who can just get hot.
Yeah, for sure. And then, just sort of sorting down the DraftKings board here and just trying to find some value if we're going to take some guys towards the top. One guy that I kind of liked was Daniel Berger, another guy with good experience here. He's got a win. That was actually the last time he played here in 2021. He hasn't played since that win. He has a T5 and a T10 here as well. Really good start to the year, honestly. T6 at Sony, T16 last week at Scottsdale. He led the field in approach last week as well. So definitely in good form there. And then I think, Ryan Gerard, I was surprised he was this low at 7,500. I mean, this guy's been as hot as anybody, really. Second, T2, T11 over his last 4 starts. Both the approach play and the putting has been really, really good. He had a good stretch of play last year, but it was kind of just, the ball striking. But now, the putting's really coming along as well. And that's why you're seeing all these high results. So those are 2 guys sort of towards the middle that I like, Lynn. Anybody maybe even lower than that, low 7, 6K range that stood out to you this week?
Well, I always try and give people options in the 6,000s. If I'm going to tell them to play Scottie Scheffler, I have to tell them, who they can balance their lineup with. And I do have 2 plays in the 6,000s, and one is Jacob Bridgman, who's off to a great start. I've probably picked him a few weeks in a row now, but he's playing well every week. This is his first time at Pebble Beach, which is a bit of a concern, but I'm not picking him to win. He's $6,900, and he's 120 to 1 on the odds board. But I think he can, he can get into the top 25. He might even be able to get into the top 20. And certainly at 6,900, that would be great. And at 6,500, I always try and give at least one pick, 6,500 or lower. Sometimes it's a real challenge to do that, but I always pick one. Even if I don't like him, he's the best one. And this week it's Tom Hoge. Tom Hoge plays great here. I'm not really quite sure why, but he does. And he won here a couple of years ago, and if you can win when they're with the 4 round pro-ams and the 6 hour rounds, and then you can come, I think you can win when there are 2 rounds of pro-ams and things. I think if you can handle that stuff, all of that, then you're in good shape. And he has played well in the signature events. He's played well here for the last 5 years. He's played here very well. And again, he's not going to miss the cut. So you do have 4 rounds of Tom Hoagie to really try and move up the leaderboard.
Yeah, just touching on some strategy here. When I was going through this, Lynn obviously writes the DraftKings piece for us on RotoWire, which is up right now that you can check out. I do the FanDuel article for RotoWire, and FanDuel was interesting this week because it was the first time I can remember they had a 6K range. They had Scotty all the way up at 15,000 something, and they had a 6K range. So trying some different things out there, but I was kind of trying to grapple with you've got 80 guys in the field, right? And this is the week where the last player in the field is better than the 50th best player in the field last week. This is a really, really deep field. Everybody that's in the field is deserving to be here. The PGA Tour wants the best players to play in these signature events, and that's what's happening. So I guess when you look at it from that perspective, could you sort of lean towards more of like a stars and scrubs type of lineup build here, just considering the fact that you're going to find still like really solid players down all the way in the 6K range?
Yeah, I think you certainly could. I mean, that would just mean, staying away from Scotty Scheffler. And I do have Scotty Scheffler in my article. It's almost a default. You have to write about him and pick him on some level. But I could see where, would not surprise me if Rory McIlroy comes back this year and doesn't play great in this tournament. And Tommy Fleetwood has been okay in this tournament, hasn't played it much, but is starting now the last 2 years. He's just making his stateside debut. Xander Schauffele has not been great so far this season. So if you want to stay away from Scotty Scheffler, I think then you can sort of leapfrog down into the 9s and the 8s. And I do have some guys there. So I think that you could make an argument for that approach. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different ways to go at it for these signature events, especially when there's no cut. That's usually we always have to go in worrying on Friday afternoon what's going to happen. But this is one of the signature events without a cut, so no need for the Friday cut sweats this week. Let's sort of get into the betting board, and as I pull up the odds on DraftKings, obviously another week that Scotty's in the field, another week that Scotty is about a 3-1 favorite. Even in this stack signature event field, let's see, we got Rory McIlroy is down at 13-1. I was kind of surprised that Xander was tied for the third option at 25-1. This is a guy that missed the cut by a shot at Torrey Pines, and then made the cut by a shot last week in Phoenix. So obviously they're going to have respect for the name and the fact that he's such an accomplished player. But there's a few guys behind him that I kind of prefer over him. Len, I'm kind of curious to see who kind of stands out to you towards the top of the board here.
Yeah, it's always such a challenge because, the thing is that you think Scotty Scheffler could win the tournament, and you're picking somebody else because Scotty Scheffler doesn't pay to pick Scotty Scheffler at plus 295 or wherever he is at this latest juncture. But Justin Rose is a guy, he's obviously playing well. And, very often I like to stay away from a guy who's just won, but Chris Goddard obviously thinks that's poor strategy. So, and Justin Rose has played great at this tournament many times over. He's played here a lot of years, and he's played here played very well. And he's plus 2,800. So he's a guy that stands out to me a little bit farther down off the certainly past McIlroy and Schauffele.
Yeah, that's funny because that was actually the name that stood out to me the most was Justin Rose at 28-1. You mentioned a great record of this event, 4 top 11 finishes and 6 career starts here. Similar putting surface, both Poana with Torrey where he won out last time, and then at Pebble Beach, obviously. And I want to say he also finished like top 5 at the US Open here when it was back in 2019 when Gary Woodland won. So I just think it's honestly, I didn't think Torrey Pines was the greatest course fit for a 45-year-old. I think this is a much better pace for somebody that old, considering how short the course is, and just it has a little bit more of an emphasis on driving the ball in the fairway and finding these greens and whatnot. So I do really like Rose there, as you mentioned.
If the weather's
Yeah,
bad, I always like
it's a
English.
good point.
And if the weather gets dicey on the weekend, I mean, I don't think the weather was too bad last. I don't think the weather was bad, but we had McIlroy, Lowry won too. So yeah, it's been traditionally a lot. Mostly Americans have won this tournament. International players have not traditionally won this tournament too many times, going back 6 decades. McIlroy was one of the few. But I do like Rose.
Yeah, no, that's a good point for sure. Any placement bets that you like here? Top 5, top 10, top 20?
Jake Knapp has been playing great. Jake Knapp, and he's plus 132. That just rolls right off your tongue. Plus 132 for a top 20. If you might want to even, dabble in a top 10 for him. Tom Hoagie mentioned earlier, plus 480 on a top 20. It's really hard to get a good top 20 number in a field of only 80, but Tom Hoagie is one of the deeper guys in the field. So even if you're not looking good after 3 rounds, he could still have one good round. I think I was a little surprised. I think he's 31st on tour in putting in the early going, so it's possible to just have a really hot round. Those 2 guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of wild, right? If you're gonna do a top 20 bet, really, you just have to finish in the top 4th of the field, basically, and that's really it. We only got 80 guys in this field, and so it's just interesting when you look at it from that perspective, even with how talented the field is. A couple of guys that I did write down. I liked Maverick McNeely for a top 5 finish at plus 480. Played really well last week, just didn't really have a great Sunday, didn't really make any putts. But he's got 2 career top 5s at Pebble Beach, so he's obviously done it before here. From the area, went to Stanford, and he's gained strokes across the board in all 3 events so far this season. So I like McNeely there. And then another guy that we haven't really talked about for top 10, Jason Day, plus 305. This dude has an unbelievable record at this event. Like I knew he had a good record, and then I saw it all the way down, and I was in shock because I couldn't believe it was that consistent. He's got 13 top 25s here in 15 starts. 9 of them are top 7 finishes. It was crazy how good he's played here for so long, and he's yet to win. He's played that well here, and he hasn't crossed the finish line first yet. But Jason Day.
You could play devil's advocate and say, yeah, he did a lot of that when the fields were weak and a lot of guys weren't here, but he played well here, after it became a signature event as well. I contribute to an article on bookies.com every week. Jason Day is going to be my pick for first round leader. I don't know if he could win the tournament, but remember, he had a great first round at the stadium course at the Amex. I think he shot a 63. It was just an incredible round. So much better than anyone else, even guys who were playing the other courses at the Amex. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And interesting. I actually did look up a little bit just to see the score differential. Spyglass was about a 1/10 of a shot easier last year than Pebble. Obviously, we only got the 1 round, so it's tough to know with the different conditions and whatnot. But fairly even compared to what we saw at the Amex when we had another course rotation. The stadium was much more difficult than the other 2 courses. So just something to keep in mind when you're going through these things. But all right, yeah. So let's go over to one and done here. And Len, I was really close last week. I took a decky, feeling good the whole weekend. And then just one left into the church pew bunkers on 18. All you had to do was make a par, hits the lip, goes to a playoff, and then the next one just snipes it again. This time it goes back into the water, and tough to complain with the P2. It still made over $1 million for me, but would have been nice to get that one more and get the extra 700,000 or whatever it was. So
yeah, that was a great call. It was a great call, and and you definitely got burned.
Yeah, we had in our RotoWire pool, we had a bunch of people actually. I think a couple people took Goddard. I think Hideki was one of the most popular plays, so a lot of people scored a lot of points last week. But this is going into this event. This is kind of what we've all been waiting for. We've talked about one and done a little bit every week here since starting this podcast, and this is when you can start anybody you want. Everybody is kind of live this week if you want to go that route. With this being a signature event, a $20 million purse, $3.6 million to first place. I want to say the top 5 get paid out over $1 million. But obviously anybody is available. So Len, who sort of are you thinking this week? And just considering the course we're playing on, do you expect to see sort of a wide spread of players near the top of the leaderboard?
Yeah, I think the leader is going to come, traditionally is going to come from one of the better guys. We see that the signature events mostly are won by the better guys. I mean, a quarter of them have been won by Scotty Scheffler, or there have been 24 signature events, something like that, since they instituted that, and he's won 6 of them. There have been a couple of long shots, but Kurt Kitayama at the Arnold Palmer a few years ago, really hard to throw a dart and land on one of those. So I think we have to focus on a top guy. Hey, if you wanted to play Scotty Scheffler this week, this is a $4 million purse. Is the only purse bigger is the players. It's not. This is one of the biggest purses. If you really think Scheffler is going to win, there's no need to wait for a major. It's not going to be that much of a bigger thing. In fact, he only has to beat 79 guys here, where maybe at the U.S. Open it has to beat 155 and, something along those lines. So a smaller field might even make sense to play Scheffler. But some of the other guys, I think in our RotoWire league, I've already used Russell Henley. That didn't work out too great, but I think Russell Henley is a good play this week. He hits the ball incredibly straight with his driver and with his irons. He's a pretty good putter on POA. I think you can go that direction. We talked about Justin Rose, I think is an option. So, both of those are top 10 players as well.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that, it almost makes more sense to play, a guy like Scotty. You're going to use him at some point, and you want him to be used in, the events with the bigger purses. So, why not take him in one where he has to beat less players? Only has to beat 80 players. I believe next week at the Genesis, it's only about 72. So, I definitely agree with that there. This week, I'm actually going to go Siwoo Kim. I think I was kind of thinking about it, and I think quite a few people have already used him. Obviously because he's had such a hot start. I think he was one of the top players used for last week at Phoenix. I think he was one of the top players used for Torrey Pines and at the Amex as well, where he had won before. So I'm going to go with Siwoo Kim. He's honestly not a guy that I am normally on, whether it be DFS, betting, anything really. So I am reaching out there, grabbing a hold of the train that is clearly already left the station, and I'm hoping that it doesn't go down crashing. So if you are somebody that normally likes to bet on Siwoo, if you use him a lot in DFS, you can blame me if he finally doesn't play good this week. So. But yeah, I think he's got a great record here. He's got 3 top 15s in his last 5 appearances. And then he's at 11. Great. I know. Yeah. 11 straight top 25s. 5 of those are top 5 finishes. So, just striking it like Scheffler, honestly, right now, just not making a thing.
I wanted to say that. I almost wrote that in my article, that with like 13 of his 14 clubs, he's Scheffler-like. And then I thought, I don't need the abuse on social media for saying that. But yeah, he really is. I mean, he's just otherwise he's like 130th or something in putting, and which has always been his issue, 131st in putting. But yeah, other than that, he'd be winning multiple. He could have won multiple tournaments.
I think he's, considering, these are small greens, you got to hit fairways, got to hit greens here. If he just has one of his better weeks with the putter, he's capable, I think, of winning this by 3 or 4 or 5 shots. That's just how well he's hitting it right now. Last week, I think if you were on, I kind of felt bad for some of the people that were on him last week, because he was just sort of teasing you. He was into 10 feet every hole on Sunday, and then just not making a thing. So, but I mean, if that's the thing, if you're betting on a guy like Siwoo, you kind of know what to expect there with the putter.
He just has to putt less terrible to win. He doesn't even have to putt great to win with everything else he's doing. Just decent.
Yeah. Good point. All right, let's see. We did already talk about score predictions a little bit here. It was weird. I looked at it, and 17-19 was the winning score for 9 straight years before last year. And Rory won it at 21. So, and kind of interesting there. Any other thing that you wanted to mention before we hop off here, Len?
I think we covered it. It's hard to believe I've run out of things to say, knowing me, but I have. I think we're good. We're good. I think it should be a fun week. And again, Scheffler and McIlroy in the same tournament for the first time in 6 months. Always looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think there's some people that think that say that I've seen on golf Twitter say Pebble's overrated and whatnot, and I don't think you just can't say something like that. If you don't like watching golf, the best players in the world attack such an iconic venue like this, these tiny greens, these holes right across or right alongside the ocean, just don't watch, I guess. But I'm excited for this week. I think it's gonna be a terrific tournament.
Great.
All righty. Well, we will be back next Tuesday. We'll wrap up Pebble Beach. We'll see what happens. And then we'll get ready for another signature event, Tiger's event, the Genesis Invitational. Don't think we'll see Tiger there, but nonetheless, Riviera. Didn't see it last year. It's kind of in your neck of the woods, Lynn. But great. It's going to be great to get back there.
Absolutely. We did miss it last year.
Yeah. All right. If you want to follow us on X, you can catch me at Roto_Ryan and then at Len Hochberg on X. We will see you all next week.